I need to share something urgent with you. An internal Republican Senate document has just surfaced, marked for leadership only, and what it says could reshape how people understand what is unfolding in Washington. Please follow this channel and enable alerts, because what I'm about to explain may mark the moment when Trump's influence within his own party began to weaken, not because of Democrats or the media, but because of Republican leaders themselves, and the shift appears to be happening faster than expected. The memo highlights one line for emphasis, stating that Greenland has already affected 11 Senate races. Not that it might, not that it could, but that the impact is already reflected in current projections. That difference alone could determine whether Republicans keep control of the Senate or lose it. According to the memo, Trump's focus on Greenland, which public polling shows most Americans oppose, has already disrupted their strategy for the 2026 midterms. What makes this more significant is who wrote the memo. This was not authored by a longtime internal critic. It was written by someone appointed and strongly supported by Trump. To understand why this document was written, you need to look at what happened in the days before it appeared, because it followed a sequence of serious political setbacks, and the last of those appears to have shifted internal thinking. First came the polling. National surveys showed overwhelming opposition to any military involvement related to Greenland, but what drew attention inside the party was the reaction in strongly Republican areas. States that had given Trump large margins showed majorities opposing the idea. Even media outlets generally favorable to Trump reportedly saw similar results in their own internal surveys. Internal party data later suggested that a large portion of voters who supported Trump in the last election were also opposed. That level of resistance among core supporters was alarming to campaign strategists. The second development involved allies. Several NATO countries issued a joint public statement expressing concern about recent rhetoric and policy direction. The language was unusually direct and raised questions about alliance stability. Diplomatic discussions followed, and although most of those conversations remain private, officials in Europe began openly discussing contingency planning that assumed less predictable U.S. leadership. That alone created unease among lawmakers who focus on national security. The third factor was economic and corporate reaction. Major defense and industrial firms reportedly paused political donations to Republican campaigns, and at least one business leader resigned from an advisory role connected to the administration, citing concerns about judgment and stability. Market indicators showed increased volatility, and large investment funds began reassessing exposure to politically sensitive assets. Financial institutions were treating political uncertainty as a material risk, not a symbolic issue. Together, these developments appear to have driven the writing of the memo. It was authored by Senator John Thune, a senior member of Republican leadership who has consistently supported Trump's agenda. The memo reportedly lists 11 Senate races, where internal data now shows significant vulnerability tied to the Greenland issue. States that had been considered safe are now described as competitive or leaning the other way. Party strategists have begun labeling certain candidates as being directly affected by this single controversy, because voters who may not follow policy debates closely still react strongly to anything that suggests international instability or major financial risk. At the same time, diplomatic communications have reportedly included warnings about possible domestic unrest, language that is highly unusual in official cables. NATO consultations have also taken place, something that is rare and generally reserved for situations involving serious security concerns. European defense officials have begun discussing how alliance operations would function with less direct American leadership, and some restructuring proposals are being explored. Currency markets have reacted as well, with the dollar weakening and foreign governments adjusting their reserve holdings, moves that affect everyday costs for consumers through prices and interest rates. Intelligence cooperation has also reportedly become more cautious, with some joint activities paused while partners reassess information-sharing arrangements. Former officials have warned publicly that reduced cooperation can have real consequences for public safety and long-term security planning. This situation also fits a broader historical pattern in Trump's political career. After moments of strong public or institutional pushback, His response has often been to intensify rhetoric or pursue more confrontational policies rather than pulling back. Examples from his first term show that major criticism was frequently followed by decisions that escalated tensions instead of easing them. That pattern is why many observers believe the current situation may not be settled simply by softer messaging or temporary pauses. Right now, Trump's public activity suggests he remains highly focused on this issue, responding frequently and sharply to critics, including members of his own party. That does not indicate disengagement. It suggests continued agitation, which in past cases has preceded further political confrontation. The key question is whether Republican leaders will act on the concerns outlined in the memo. Mechanisms such as the War Powers Resolution and constitutional provisions exist, but historically they have rarely stopped presidents from pursuing military or foreign policy actions they consider necessary. No administration has ever been fully constrained by those tools once it chose to push forward. Some constitutional measures have never been formally used at all, which means there is little real-world guidance on how such conflicts would play out. From here, three broad outcomes are possible. One is that Trump fully steps back from the issue and shifts focus elsewhere, which would reduce immediate tensions but could weaken his standing within his party. Another is that party leaders criticize privately, but avoid taking binding action, allowing the controversy to fade without structural change. The third is a direct institutional confrontation, where Congress attempts to impose limits and the White House resists, creating a serious constitutional dispute with unpredictable consequences. Historically, party leaders often choose accommodation over confrontation. But what appears different this time is that the concern is not only about public image or media reaction, but about losing control of the Senate. For many lawmakers, electoral survival is more persuasive than principle statements, and the memo frames the problem in those exact terms. In the coming days, several indicators may suggest which direction this is heading. Public behavior from Trump will show whether advisors are restraining his messaging or whether he is becoming more reactive. Media appearances by key Republican senators may signal coordinated public positioning. Financial markets will reflect whether international investors see this as short-term noise or long-term risk. Statements from NATO and other allies will show whether diplomatic concern is stabilizing or intensifying. Personnel changes inside the administration could also indicate whether internal disagreement is being tolerated or removed. What cannot yet be known is whether Republican leaders will act collectively, whether Trump will escalate politically, or whether existing institutions will be able to manage the conflict without deeper damage. What is clear is that the next several days are likely to be decisive in determining whether this remains a political controversy or turns into a larger test of institutional limits. Stay connected for updates, because if new information emerges, it will likely shift the situation quickly. Share this with anyone who believes this is routine political drama. The internal memo does not just describe a problem, it outlines responses that could carry serious consequences. I will continue following developments closely and will explain what the memo actually recommends and what that could mean going forward.